Alright, welcome back everyone. So Leptos version 0.7 just dropped a few weeks ago. So today we are going to take a look at some of the new changes and features that I found interesting. But if you do not want to watch this entire video, okay, I'll be sure to add those items over here. So namely, new syntax, a new two-way binding feature, the new built-in Reactive Store, and lastly, routes optimization in the new Leptos version 0.7. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Alright, we're going to start with the new syntax in version 0.7. So on line 10 here and line 11, you can see that we are creating a signal using the create_signal function provided by Leptos. But starting from 0.7 onwards, this has been deprecated. So instead of using create_signal, okay, what you can use is just signal here, okay, which will create and give you the same two things, a read signal and a write signal, and depending on your data type as well. So in this case, we have a very simple string. And as for create resource, the same applies, but instead of calling, of course, signal or resource, okay, the new recommended way is to use resource new, okay, which is similar to how you would usually write Rust in other scenarios. For example, maybe when you are building a CLI tool. So these are some of the new syntax changes, but for the more extensive changes, I will definitely put the link to the release notes for version 0.7 below in the top pinned comments. Next, let's move on to a very new feature that I really like a lot, the two-way binding. And now over here, we have on line 28, a simple input all the way to line 32. And as you can see on line 29, we have on input. So whenever the user types anything into this text field, okay, we set it to paragraph here using set_paragraph, which we just created in the previous section. But starting from 0.7 onwards, instead of doing all this boilerplate code, let's remove that. We can use a new feature called two-way binding. And to do that, all you have to do is type in bind value equals to the write and read signal itself. Right, so that's paragraph and set paragraph. Okay, let's save that and let's see it in action in our browser over here. So I've created this very simple app to demonstrate the new changes and features in Leptos 0.7. So if we go to our info page here, and you see the text field in the middle. So if I type anything here, you can see that, okay, we are also printing out or rendering the new value in the text field directly below it. So that's the two-way binding in action. So if you go back once again to Helix, you can see that it is a very good quality of life feature and it's very convenient by just doing this. Yeah. Okay, next, let's move on to the new built-in Reactive Store that I am very, very interested in. So before we move on to show you how to set up your Reactive Store, let's first see it in action. So over here, back at our simple app to demonstrate the new changes and features in Leptos 0.7, I've created 3 buttons here on this page itself. So firstly is the info page that we saw previously in the previous section. And secondly is a store page that contains some information about a user, for example. And lastly is a protected settings page that, okay, notice that when I click on it, nothing happens because in the store itself, we are not authenticated yet because this is false. So for example, now if I log in by clicking on this login button, you can see that authenticated is now changed to true. And if we go back to home and click on the settings page button, and now we can access it. So let's go back to the home page and to the store page again. And if we log out now, we are no longer authenticated. And let's go back to home and let's try to click on our settings page. You can see that we are no longer able to access our settings page because this is a protected route. And so you can see that these 3 pieces of information are actually part of the Reactive Store. So to see how all this is set up, let's jump back to Helix. Okay, we are back at Helix. So firstly, in order to set up the new built-in Reactive Store, okay, let's first go to Tomo here. Make sure you add this reactive underscore stores create to your Rust project. Okay, and once you have done that, okay, notice here that, okay, first we have to set up the store itself by importing it over here at the top. Okay, make sure the struct for your store has to derive the store trait on line 4, as you can see to the top left corner. And if you want your struct to be mutable, okay, be sure to also derive the patch trait from the reactive stores crate, as you can see on line 9. And as you can see, we have the name, the email, and the boolean whether if this user is authenticated or not on line 11 to 13. And here we have a very simple new function to create a new user. And now to actually create the store itself, let's go back to our app.rs here. And as you can see on line 21 to 23, so this is how you would create a new Reactive Store starting from Leptos 0.7. Okay, it's nothing too complex. You just call store new and you pass in the struct that has the derived trait from the store trait. Yeah, that has derived the store trait. And of course the patch trait as well if you want to mutate the stuff in it. Okay, and once you have created this store over here, you can see that if we scroll down, okay, we are essentially just passing in the store to the various pages that need to use it. So you can see here we are passing the store, or rather the user in the store, to our store page. And if we go to our store page, we can see that it accepts the user itself, right, as a field of the store over here. So once again, you need to import that. You can see that we have imported that on line 3 over here. And in order to modify or mutate anything in your store, you just call, for example, here we have user. We can also do name, as you can see here. Yeah, and we just call set in order to mutate it or update it. So that is what we did here to lock the user in or out on line 13. So it's quite straightforward to update anything in the store itself. So nothing too complex, yeah. And lastly, you can see if we go back to our app.rs here, you can see we have the protected route here for our settings page and the condition. And basically this is us reading from the store to see if the user is authenticated or not by calling .get here at the end. So pretty straightforward to set up your Reactive Store to enable custom logic depending on how you want to set this up. And next, we're going to move on to a very good feature or maybe change, that is the routes optimization. Now, in order to understand what this routes optimization is about, let's take a look at this app again. So if I refresh the page now, and I have also opened up the inspector to our all the way to the right, you can see that the size of the WASM package is about 5.4 megabytes. I've already clicked and selected it. Yeah, so that is not small, even though we are in debug mode or development mode. And if we go back to Helix now, you can see that we are in our app.rs and we have our various routes under the routes here. So this new routes optimization comes into play if you do not need nested routes. You can see at the top we have imported this new flat routes here. So instead of using routes here on line 36, if you do not need nested routes, change to this new flat routes here. So if I save this, and if we go back to our browser here, Chrome, and now if I refresh the page, you can see now instead of 5.3 or 5.4 megabytes, it is now 4.8 megabytes. Yeah, so that is a savings of maybe 600 to 700 kilobytes, or is it 5 to 600 kilobytes, which is not small. Okay, which is quite a good amount of savings, especially if your users or some of your users are on a slower connections. Yeah, slower connections. Of course, once you change to the release build, this will go down even more. So I would say this is also a good quality of life change and optimization. So once again, props and thanks to the Leptos team doing their hard work here. So those are some of the new changes and features that we just covered. Obviously, we have not covered everything. And if you're interested in the full release notes for Leptos 0.7, okay, once again, I will put that link in the description box below or in the pinned comment below. But comment down below if you are interested to find out or if you want to know more about any other features of the new Leptos 0.7, or if you are interested to watch other types of videos from this channel as well. And as usual, if you have not already subscribed, be sure to do so and turn on that notification bell so that you do not miss any new videos from this channel as well. Lastly, be sure to stay awesome and stay safe as always. Cheers!